Hello again from the backyard of my beautiful nectarine tree. That's going to be our anchor system that we're going to use. I want to have a look today at how we might set a client abseil up. And there's a few things that happen in these systems here, but we'll work through them one by one. Like with my other videos, I've got everything I need ready to go on my harness, but this time I've actually already pre-flaked those ropes out. So making sure, like last time, that there's no flat spots or nicks or anything like that in the rope. The first thing that we need to do, as per usual, is establish an anchor and a safety line. So there's a few different ways that we can do it, but I'm actually going to pre-tie a figure 8 ready for me to re-thread through my harness. But in this setting, what I'm going to look to do is actually measure out a line of rope from where my anchor would be out to the edge of the cliff so that I could work from there. I'm going to show you a slightly different knot that we might work with to allow us to have two working ends of the rope coming out from our anchor point. So that would be my safety as one end and where my belay system's going to come out from the other. I'm actually going to take a huge line of rope here, so you can see it's a full 2 arms length of mine, and I'm going to use that bite to create essentially a double tail. So I'm then going to take that big bite and tie a figure 8, but as you can see, with a really large tail out the other end. I've already got that double figure 8 here. However, I'm going to use my tail, my long tail coming out the other end, to then re-thread my double figure 8. So it's a double re-threaded figure of 8. So here we go, back through. The same as I would with a single line, I'm just following where that rope has come from, all the way around the back, down the hole, tidying it up a little bit as we go, pulling all of my strands to get it nice and tight. And I can check it in a similar way, except that you can see we're going to have groups of 4 ropes this time. So it's no longer going to be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, but if it's too difficult to count out 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, you can just look for those 5 groups of rope. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 groups. Always checking that at each of those points we've got the 4 strands. I've then, in this scenario, got 2 lines that I can work from. I'll just re-measure this a little bit. This becomes my tie-in end before I get too close to that edge of the cliff. Re-threading that back through my harness. Beautiful. I can then check my length, and if I need to make any adjustments I can tighten that off a little bit, but just to give myself a little bit of working room, I'm pretty happy with where that is. So you can see now I've got my safety line, but I have a second working end where the other end of that green line of rope is, that I can establish an anchor as a top belay system to effectively lower a climber off. So at this point I'm going to tie an end align knot. I could tie an alpine butterfly here, but in this situation I'm going to tie my figure 8 on the bite. That's then where I can clip my belay device and lower a climber off from. From here, I'm going to make sure that I've got everything ready to go. So I'm tying in a figure 8 ready for a climber to thread in. I'm going to make sure that there's enough line there that will hit the ground. Fantastic, so we've got plenty there. Let's pull that up and get that nice and neatly coiled. That then gets placed through my belay device, making sure that my carabiner is then clipped. Okay, So you can see on this line, really now I've got my own safety, and then I've got another line there to be able to lower someone off from. What you could do is have a completely separate line for you to work from. You could work off of a prusik. There's multiple things that you can do here, but I'm just saving hopefully the amount of gear that I need or the amount of gear that I'm using. And because it's separate, I can actually manage myself quite well in moving away from that climber, but ensuring that we've established the anchor, established my safety, and then all I've done here is tied a power point off from that anchor that then I can belay or lower somebody down off the edge of the cliff from. So that first line that we've tied with that green rope there will become our backup system. It's an opportunity for me as the guide to lower somebody down regardless of what they're doing. But realistically, this is an abseil, so we want the client or the student, whoever it is, to be doing some work themselves, to get the experience and feel like they're in control of what's happening here. So I'm going to set up that abseil line that they can work from, and it's why I've kept myself separate on a completely different rope with my safety as well. So I've pre-tied a figure 8 here, and I'm just going to use that as my anchor on this tree here. So I'm going to wrap around that tree. Let's go a couple of times because I can today. And then I'm going to re-thread that figure of 8, making sure that my tension is going to be in the right line that I need it. So there's my re-threaded figure of 8. I'm just going to coil this rope and throw it off the edge so that we can see something here. Again, here's a really good chance to be checking that rope as you're running your hand over the top of it, making sure there's no flat spots, where the core has been damaged, and also checking that there's not some damage to the sheath or anything like that. Because this is our abseil line, always a really good habit here to actually tie a knot in the end. If for some reason this wasn't touching the ground, the client or the person that's abseiling is not going to go off the end of it. Keeping in mind that in this scenario we do have some backup systems, you can make some choices about whether it would actually be easier for you to keep that knot out and deal with lowering them down on the other line, but it's a habit of mine to get into in terms of tying that knot in the end. We're going to throw this rope off, making sure that we've cooling rope all the way down to the ground. What we've then got set here is a single line that somebody could actually abseil off. But in the scenario that they got caught, say we got hair caught in the abseil device or anything like that, we need to be able to take weight off of the rope that they're abseiling on and take over the whole scenario on the line, or in this setting the green line that we're lowering them off on, so that we can take all pressure off of this. So we're going to build what we call a load release system within this abseil line. So I'm going to take back all of the rope from the ground to the point where just the end is touching. So let's bring that rope back up. And if you have a look over the edge here, you can see that the end of the rope and the knot is just still touching the ground. So I'm just going to hold that at a position now where that can stay here. So at this point, I now need to have some sort of system in which I can lock this off, that it's tied nice and secure, but actually it resembles a belay setting so that I can untie that tension on the rope and lower this off. So if this was just tied off with a figure 8 and then I had full tension on this, I wouldn't be able to release that tension. So what I've done here is I've put a separate anchor system onto this tree. I've got my tape going around and I've got my carabiner here. I could just put a belay device on and lock that belay device off, but I've used my belay device in my lowering system and I don't have another one. So I'm going to tie a knot that doesn't lock, it actually acts as a belay device itself. I'm going to tie what's known as a Munter's hitch. So I'm going to take that rope and pass it over the top of my hand. I'm going to reach through between the rope and my arm to grab the end of the rope that's going back up towards the tree. Pull that through, and I'm not going to twist it at all. Just going to pass it over the back of my hand. I'm going to take that knot and clip it onto my carabiner. Remembering that I said we could just have a belay device on here and pass this rope through, but the way this knot works is that I can take rope in and lock it off, or if I wanted to lower the rope down or take the tension off of that line, watch the knot flip to the other side of the carabiner as I pull tension down on the climber or abseiler's line. It flipped over to the other side and it passes rope through. Okay, so take rope in, flips and allows me to take, tension back on the climber's side, flips back and passes through. So sneaky little knot that I can use if I don't have another belay device there. Okay, so let's pull it back to the side in which our belayer's end, our guide's end pulls it up, and then in the same way that if I had a belay device here, I'm going to lock this line of rope off by coming and taking a bite back through the carabiner, and then I'm going to tie some half hitches with my bite of rope in behind. One half hitch, two half hitches, and three. Now I've got enough length in that bite there that I can take a carabiner, clip it back up to my anchor. I have definitely locked that carabiner that I'm using for this load releasing system. We will say do your carabiners up all of the time, but this is one of those exceptions to the rule, because if I need to release the load off of this line really quickly, I don't want to be dealing with unscrewing carabiners, particularly if for some reason they have caught. But this also indicates to me that this is definitely the carabiner that I need to take off. I would undo my half hitches and then pass the line back through to release the load off of our abseiler. But it's why it's absolutely critical that I've done my checks and double checks before I leave this alone, but I'll make sure that I've finished before I walk away. So I've now got a line that somebody can abseil down off of, and I've got a load releasing scenario here. Okay. Okay, so let's have a look at how some of this stuff actually works and how we might guide a student down an abseil using our load releasing abseil. So I've already got my knot pre-tied in my lowering line, and as I can control that and that becomes the safety of the person being abseiled, that's the first thing that we deal with. Now you would have them in a safe spot to be able to tie in and move over to you. We're a little bit crowded here, but Lewis is quite safe back from the edge of the cliff, and he's tied himself in before. So if you need to assist this process, then potentially you would do it in a slightly different spot. But I'm going to pass that line to Lewis and say, you tie into that there using your rethreaded figure of 8. At this point, I've already got my abseil device set up from when I established this load releasing abseil, and I'm going to get to a point where I'm actually tensioning him right off so that he can't fall off the cliff once he starts moving into the abseil zone. Really important that he does his checks, but at the same time I'm doing those checks with him. So I can physically come over and 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10. It's through the loops. We've checked his harness, we've checked his helmet and done all of those things. But if he's way back from where we're tied in and established, you can have Lewis count those out while I'm watching and ensuring. And if at any point you're unsure, make sure somebody else goes and checks, or you may need to untie, go over, double check it, come back and tie in, and then work through that process. What I'm going to ask you to do, Lewis, though, is really slowly, just come so that you're up to the edge of the cliff here, or close to. You want to use your right or your left hand to abseil on?
I would say right.
Beautiful. So come this side of that black rope, and you're in a nice secure position. Now I actually like to have the abseil device already set up on the abseil line, but for the purpose of being able to show you today, I'm not going to. But really important that I've always got Lewis locked off, and if I can't do that with my hand, I can do exactly the same thing that I've done on my abseil line, and I can take this line of rope back through my carabiner and lock off my belay device so that Lewis isn't actually going to go anywhere. I still like to maintain control of it just to be doubly sure, but I'm then going to take my abseil device and set that up here. Okay. So the way that we work with this abseil device is looks like a figure 8, but we can imagine it a little bit like a fry pan. I'm going to take a bite of rope, pass the eggs into the fry pan, the large bit, and over the handle from the bottom. Okay, let's have a little look at that again. Eggs in the fry pan and over the handle. Checking that the rope runs over the top of the central point of that 8. I'm then going to take this carabiner and clip it to Lewis's belay loop, ensuring that it's done nice and tightly. So he's now got his figure of 8 ready to abseil. Have that in your right hand. And I'm just going to get you set up here ready to go, Lewis. Beautiful. So stay there. Making sure that we're still locked off, ready to go. So if I take this in nice and tight and you lean back a little bit, Lewis, go right up onto the edge of that cliff there and lean back. Can you feel that you're not going anywhere?
Yeah.
Now, for the only time I'm going to let you do this, just let go of that black rope for a minute. You're still not going anywhere, are you?
Yeah.
So you can see that regardless of what else happens here, I have you. I've got you on a backup system and you're not going to go anywhere. But as we're working with this today, I want to give you as much control as you want to take. So this won't have tension if it doesn't need to, but you don't need to tell me that. I'm going to control that for you. So pick that black rope up again. Now what you're going to do, remember when we were climbing and you were lowering people off? You had that round by your hip, didn't you?
Yeah.
So what you're going to do here is effectively 2 of the jobs that you've done from when you were climbing. You're going to pretend that you're at the top of the cliff ready to come down. So your feet are going to be nice and wide apart, and you're going to do exactly what you're doing now. Sit back in your harness and allow gravity to take over. But you're going to combine that with the job of the belayer. So you're going to slowly let that rope pass through the device and pass through your hand so that you can gradually step off the edge of this cliff and lower yourself down. As you do that, I'm going to let rope come through this belay device, but you don't need to worry about that green rope at all. You control the black rope, I'll control the green rope.
Yep.
Any questions?
That seems clear.
Beautiful. Right up on the edge of the cliff with your heels hanging over. Step back, let your heels go over the edge of the cliff, toes on the edge. Okay, now what you're going to need to do is lean back in your harness. So your bottom's going to go back as if you're sitting on a toilet, and you're going to keep those legs nice and straight. Lean yourself back and let that black rope start to slide through. Wonderful. Good job. Done the right thing with your feet going back. They're nice shoulder width apart. Good. They'll come right round. Now I'm just going to control you at the edge a little bit here. Move your feet down slightly on the wall. Well done. Excellent. And you're starting to go down towards the bottom. Now all the way down to the ground there. Great work. And if you got to the bottom there, Lewis, you'd be calling safe.
Safe.
And I would ask you to go off belay and we'd work through that process. Just stay there for me for a minute though and get tension on that black line of rope. This is where we can have a look at what might be able to be managed on our end of things. So if Lewis got his hair stuck or clothes stuck in that belay device, there's a couple of things that we can actually do here. In the first instance, we need to ensure Lewis that he's going to be okay, but there's an urgency about this because he's got his hair stuck in, he's not all that comfortable. So what we can do is lock this line off. That is our lowering line, so that we can work and use our load release. So I'm going to pass back through my carabiner and tie my half hitches to ensure that once tension comes really onto this green line, that it's locked off and he's not going to go anywhere. Do a double check of that, and I'm going to work back over to my abseil line here. Okay, so I'm now going to take, let's grab the camera, have a little looky. I'm going to undo this knot here. I'm going to allow some rope to actually feed back down, and then I'm going to, once tension's on my lowering line, take control of this situation. Okay? How you going there, Lewis?
Yep, good.
Alright, doesn't hurt too much with your hair.
Not at the moment, but it's getting there.
Good. It's going to come off very quickly there, mate. Actually just going to let a little bit of that black rope out towards you, and then you'll be able to free your hair from that line. Okay, nice and slack there, and you can see the slack that's come into that black rope, but you can see the tension is wholeheartedly on that green rope there. Hey mate, now that we've got this sorted out, do you want to keep working on that black rope and continue abseiling down to the ground?
Yep.
So he's happy to continue. So you can actually now just reset this load releasing abseil, because you've let a little bit of tension through. All you have to do is tie it back off. If he was really upset and didn't want to continue, we could just let that rope slide through. So I could even unclip that black rope from the carabiner if I needed to, and just allow myself to work on this lowering the green line here. But he's happy to continue. So I'm going to lock it back off again with a bit of slack. Tying my half hitches, clipping it back up to my anchor, coming back over to this green line, remembering that we've now got all the tension on that, so we need to slowly let that back through until the tension returns to the black line of rope. Now at this point I'm holding the line of rope on my live end to ensure that there's not a jerk all the way down onto his black rope, or onto the line he's controlling. I'm just going to let a bit of this green rope through, Lewis, and then you'll feel the tension come back onto that black line, and you can keep abseiling. There's our load release abseil. You safe at the ground there, mate?
Safe.
Beautiful. Off belay, and we can work that gear out.